Hi, friends. We're going to start soon. If I can get some help, tell people out in the halls to come on in and join us.
Let's see.
Okay, friends, can we gather and get started? Hey, Jackie, can you herd people in so we can get started? Thank you. I could have done that. Thanks. Somebody's phone just rang, so that's going to remind me to remind you to please keep tweeting and Facebooking, etc., but please keep your ringer off or on vibrate or however you do that thing you do. My name is Kevin Martin. I'm the Executive Director of Peace and Planet, and as you've no doubt gathered by now, no, I'm not. Peace Action, that's what I'm the Executive Director of. Peace Action. Where's my paycheck? Actually, that helps make my next point, that I am by far the least competent, eloquent, and organized of the three co-conveners of Peace and Planet, far behind Joseph Gerson and Jackie Cabasso. So this last panel, I think, in a lot of ways, is part of the cohesion and the heart of what we've been trying to do here with Peace and Planet. And one of the things that we're working hard to do is to get people to open their minds, make connections, challenge assumptions, even about conflicts which are very difficult, sometimes even within the progressive movement. And we're very fortunate to have friends with us from the Korean Solidarity Movement to deliver a statement about the conflict in Korea and about a way forward. We're going to have that presentation first. It's going to be a statement by Hannah Kim, who's the youth representative of SPARK, which is the Solidarity for Peace and Reunification in Korea. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the panel and introduce them as we go. But first of all, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to Hannah Kim from SPARK.
Denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Is it still possible? In spring 2013, North Korea and the United States were on the brink of nuclear war. North Korea continues to increase its nuclear arsenal and missile capability and has stipulated its status as a nuclear weapons state in its constitution. In this discouraging context, is the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula still possible? Yes, there is still a way. Above all, there is hope in the fact that North Korea remains determined as ever to achieve the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. North Korea has consistently made this position clear through various statements, such as the discourse by its National Defense Commission on June 16, 2013, as well as a statement by its Foreign Ministry on October 10, 2013. These statements in favor of denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula were all made after its stipulation of its status as a nuclear weapons state in April 2012. And the fact that these statements were made even as North Korea was the object of U.S. threats of preemptive strike and nuclear attack demonstrates North Korea's resolute determination for denuclearization of the peninsula. The condition that North Korea has set forth for denuclearization is straightforward: the abandonment of U.S.'s hostile policies against North Korea. U.S.'s policy of hostility is what caused North Korea to possess nuclear weapons in the first place. Once the cause is removed, the effect can also be resolved. Abandoning its hostile stance against North Korea was a policy course eventually chosen by former U.S. administrations. Therefore, it should not be difficult for the Obama administration to do the same. In the past, the Clinton and Bush administrations had provided negative security assurances to North Korea and had agreed to establish diplomatic ties with North Korea and a peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. On October 3, 2013, Secretary of State John Kerry mentioned the possibility of a non-aggression treaty between the United States and North Korea. This statement is in complete conformity with North Korea's position. The denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula rests ultimately on the choice made by the Obama administration. Should the Obama administration continue to expand missile defense capabilities in East Asia and create a U.S. ROK-Japan trilateral alliance, thereby reproducing a structure of Cold War-like confrontation in Northeast Asia, then North Korea will further strengthen its nuclear capacity and denuclearization will become out of reach. On the other hand, should the Obama administration give up its hostile stance toward North Korea and make way for a peace treaty and a peace regime on the Korean Peninsula, then denuclearization can also be achieved simultaneously, and then we can make progress toward establishing a Northeast Asian nuclear weapons-free zone. North Korea's stance on nuclear abolition is forward-looking compared to that of the other nuclear powers in and outside of the NPT regime. The active interest and support of all of you in this matter will bring us closer to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah. And for ease of transition and speed, the speakers are all going to speak from the table here. And I just noticed in the live stream, I'm not in the shot. So those of you at home, you're lucky because I'm by far the least good looking of everybody on the panel here. So this last panel, which again I think in a lot of ways is the heart of what we're trying to do this year with Peace and Planet, I was fortunate enough to be part of the organizing in 2005 and 2010 around the Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference, which you cannot say that fast 5 times, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference. And at those times, we were making connections, especially between the Iraq War, broader issues of militarism, and other related issues. But I think this year we've done the best at integrating climate change concerns, social, racial, economic justice concerns with broader militarism and denuclearization concerns. And the theme of this panel, looking forward to movement building and actions for the future, we hope that this is going to talk about linkages between movements, but also at least to begin to think about what might be a future for the Peace and Planet brand or framework, if you will. Not necessarily that we're promoting a new coalition or a new organization, but if this feels right, how do we continue this is basically what we want to do. I was going to introduce my co-chair, but since she speaks the Queen's English way better than I do, she gets to introduce herself.
My first language is Welsh, so I wouldn't really assume that.
That would be awesome. I would love to hear you do that.
Croeso i'r Unol Daleithiau. There you go. Anyway, my name's Sara Medi Jones. I'm a campaigns officer at the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, that's CND in the UK. Our work at the moment is focused on trying to stop the British government from buying a new nuclear weapon system. This is going to cost £100 billion, while at the same time, the government are telling us there's no money for health, there's no money for houses, there's no money for welfare. What this has meant is that our campaign in the UK has allowed us to join in with other social campaigns, such as to save the National Health Service, or to build new homes, or the climate change campaign. So this is one example of how we're trying to build the anti-nuclear movement in the UK. I look forward to today's panel where we'll be expanding on that discussion. And we're going to start straight away with Mr. Reiner Braun. German peace activist Reiner has been co-chair of the International Peace Bureau since 2013 and is the executive director of the International Association of Lawyers Against Nuclear Arms. Reiner has been active in the German and international peace movement since the 1980s. He has a long relationship with CND. We've worked together many times, most recently on the anti-NATO protests in Newport last year. So welcome, Reiner.
Dear colleagues and dear friends, what to say at the end of such a great and successful conference with really good and impressive discussions. But I will start with a critical word. I think we cannot satisfied with us. We are not reacting adequate to the challenges we are facing. And I will only mention 2. The permanent modernization of nuclear weapons and the war in the Ukraine, which is not only a single war, which was dangerous enough, but it has the possibility for a bigger international war. And these words are not mine. The danger of such a war is described by the former Chancellor of Germany, Helmut Schmidt, by leading figures of think tanks in the United States, by Mikhail Gorbachev and many other politicians and elder statesmen. And where are the millions on the streets which are protesting against this war and saying, stop NATO going to the east? I think we have to look for people which are on the streets. Small groups protesting against the war. And I say this not to accuse us, but I say this as a challenge we have to face. The challenge is how we can rebuild a peace movement in the world which brings millions of people on the streets, mobilize the different societies. And I would recognize you that this is possible. It was possible in the 80s in the fight against nuclear weapons, and it was possible in the fight against the illegal war in Iraq. But we have to go back and think how we can develop such a movement. That is the challenge we are facing. And Zia Mian was right yesterday when he said that we make failures. And one of the biggest failures we made was that we were not able in many countries to work and to realize the generation change, that we were not able to see the new challenges which coming up with the winning cause of the neoliberalistic system and the individualistic approach which is brought on the agenda, and we were not able to work in an adequate way with the new social media. I think there are much more reasons. I only want to mention some to say that we make failures. And friendly say we made one more failure. This is we were too polite and too brave. We do not fight aggressive enough against our enemies. And the enemies were fighting aggressive against us. They were developing wars all around the world. NATO is engaged up to now in 35 military interventions all around the world. And we are sitting here and are brave. That is not the answer on the challenges we have to give. And saying this, I think we have also to think how long we want to lobby with governments in the nuclear weapons issue when we know that these governments want to modernize nuclear weapons. We should protest against them and stop the stupid lobbying with governments which are on the other side. This brings me to how to develop it. And I think this conference was a big step forward because it brought together different social movements which are related to militarism, climate change, social movement, environmental movement. We have to go together with trade unions and churches on a common path. This is one part of the answer to develop a new movement. Another part is, I think we have to enlarge our international contacts and our common work. Who of our organization has contacts to the small peace groups in Russia and East Europe? Who of our groups have contacts to the African movements on social affairs? We need a worldwide movement, and this means we have to overcome our European Atlantic centralism. And this is a big challenge because this is not easy, but we have to do it. And what does this mean? And I should be concrete at the end. First, I have a very simple point to mention. We have to support the fight of the IPB that the Hibakushas will get the Nobel Peace Prize. So go home, send letters to the Nobel Peace Prize Committee and say they have to get the Nobel Prize and not such stupid organizations like European Union or Obama or the new President of the United States again. The second point, I think, is we should come together tomorrow on a big rally protesting against nuclear weapons. And we should continue protesting against nuclear weapons modernization, against the existing of nuclear weapons during the next days at the NPT conference. The diplomats and the government should see our protest, not only our words. The time for words in the nuclear weapons issue is definitely over. All words are said. They knew what we mean, and they are doing the opposite, so we have to protest tomorrow on the street and during the next weeks. And my third point is, the incredible amount of military spending in the world, the militarization of quite all societies in the world, the further existence of nuclear weapons and all the wars in the world are really crying for a common international answer. Let us think and prepare, starting with this conference, a worldwide common action for 2016, having in mind the success of our common Iraq actions in 2003, a common international action in 2016 against the three main points: militarism and war and military spending. These common international action combined on the street, combined in the social media, could really develop a new pressure on the governments and can show that we are really in a national peace movement family which can act. And I really would like to say we should learn from the Japanese peace movement, who is really a people peace movement, deeply connected in the society, how to develop such a international, society-oriented, deeply supported organization. This peace movement is needed when we really want to stop the wars in the world and want to come to nuclear disarmament. So let us use this conference as a start point for common activities in the future. Maybe we can develop a first highlight in 2016 with a common international action. Thank you.
Thank you, Reiner. Some very good points there. It's almost impossible to imagine 1 million people on the streets of London today protesting against anything. So yeah, we need to do something. Next to speak is Thomas de Toledo. Thomas is the General Secretary of Cebrapaz, which is the Brazilian Center of Solidarity with Peoples and Struggle for Peace. He is also a Professor of International Relations at the University Paulista in Sao Paulo, as well as being a historian. Thank you, Thomas.
Dear comrades and friends, first of all, I thank to the organization of this event for the invitation, especially to Alfred Marder, President of the United States Peace Council, and Joseph Gerson of American Friends of Services Committee. It's a great pleasure to be here with many struggles of peace from different countries of the world. We have a very important duty here, to give our contribution toward a world free of nuclear and mass destruction weapons, and to propose a new model of a sustainable economy facing the failed model that is destroying natural environment and causing drastic changes in the climatic change. We are here to build the basis of a peaceful and solidarity world. My colleagues, we are in a very dangerous international framework. Since the boost of the crisis of capitalism in 2007, we have watched the growing of poverty in most countries of the world. The policies of austerity conducted by the leaders of developed countries are meaning cut of social and labor rights, resulting in more unemployment and concentration of wealth. 1% of the people has more than 50% of the world's wealth. Together with economic inequalities, we can listen to the drums of war being played. When Obama was elected, there was a great hope in the United States and in the whole world that the age of the unilateralism and aggressiveness represented by Bush's administration had finished. But what occurred is exactly the contrary. The President Nobel of Peace remains with the war in Afghanistan. He sent United States troops to the third war against Iraq since 1991. He supported the assault of NATO against Libya in 2009 and finances the aggression against Syria. Now, his government is investing in provocations against Russia and Ukraine, trying to create a huge war in Eastern Europe. The same machine that created Al-Qaeda is now feeding the Islamic State. Like the Nazis did in the burning of a Reichstag, false flag operation combined with lies of mainstream media has become the rule for new pretexts to do more wars. Those wars are justified by a virtual exceptionalism evoked in the resurrected corpses of the ideology of a manifest destiny. The US exceptionalism was denounced by Russian President Vladimir Putin in an article in the New York Times. Russia is under siege of US military bases with NATO approaching from its border. The same is occurring against China in the pivot to Asia. And in Brazil, there is an operation of a regime change being built. Why these countries? Because they are BRICS, and they are proposing a multipolar world, suggesting alternatives to dollar currency dominance, and they are creating other banks with the same role of the IMF and World Bank. The operations of regime change throughout the world, conducted by the United States and its vassal states and NATO, grows frighteningly. Like in the warmer times of the Cold War, the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA acted together with the US embassies, NGOs, and other institutes to impose what they call as freedom agenda. It means to withdraw governments which do not attend to US interests. Using the tactics systematized by Professor Jenny Sharpins everywhere in the world, we see the National Endowment for Democracy, together with USAID, Open Society Foundations, and other organizations financing and training people to substitute local governments by puppet regimes, aligned with the US intents. Yes, the Colorado Revolution in Eastern Europe and the Arab Spring in general are not democratic movements, but operations of a regime change conducted by the same center of command. They always repeat the same pattern: unleash the hate against corruption, which exists and everywhere, directing it to the leaders of the countries. They use the immense power of mainstream media to do a brainwash in the people and to promote waves of a process against governments. In Latin America, after the coup of the Tat in Honduras and Paraguay, we are facing new threatenings against Venezuela, Brazil, and Argentina. But what crimes this government have committed? The crime of overtaking poverty and illiteracy. The crime of paving an alternative way of integration with solidarity. The crime of discover new reserves of oil and explore it with sovereignty. Recently, the United States has declared the government of Venezuela as a threatening of national security. It's a step to justify another military intervention. But the people of the United States needs to know what actually is occurring in Venezuela. The Bolivarian Revolution is an answer in a continent which was assaulted since the colonial period by foreign powers. In 2002, the U.S. allies with Venezuelan oligarchy orchestrated a coup against President Chavez. The coup failed, and Chavez returned to the presidency supported by millions of people. Since 1999, Venezuela had 11 elections, and Chavez and Maduro was victorious in 10 of them. Different from the U.S. electoral process, which you watch great show of business and marketing, in Venezuela we saw a true democracy, with people participating in decisions of the country. Thus, this aggression against Venezuela is an aggression to democracy. I need to mention what is happening in Brazil. In 2006, the government of President Lula discovered a huge reserve of oil in the pre-salt offshore layer. Coincidentally, when Lula announced the discovery, the United States reactivated the Fourth Fleet of Navy to monitor Brazilian exploitation of oil in South Atlantic. Together with this, the U.S. is surrounding Brazil with military bases in Colombia, Peru, and Paraguay. Why Brazil is so important for U.S. plans? Because Brazilian government has created a model of exploitation of oil that 85% of the profits belongs to state, which is 75% being invested in public education and 25% in public health. What country in the world invests its the profit of oil exploitation in education and health? Because the Brazilian state company Petrobras has become a target of a coward speculative attack. What is happening in Brazil is not a crisis of corruption, but a calculated operation to justify the privatization of the company. But Brazilian people will resist to this assault. About the nuclear mass destruction weapons, the opinion of Cebrapaz is that the Stockholm appeal remains valid, and we must struggle to the abolition of all these devices in the world. However, it cannot be a pretext to new wars like was done against Iraq in 2003 and like it has been used to justify an aggression against Iran. The true threatening lies behind those which have nuclear and mass destruction weapons, in particular those that hide their arsenal like Israel does. We support all efforts done for a Middle East free of all nuclear and mass destruction weapons. The last point which I will stress is about the efforts to revert the climate changes. All countries of the world need to contribute to this, but those which polluted more in the last 2 centuries have more obligation. Again, to combat the climate changes cannot be used as pretext to blockade the development of countries that are in process of industrialization. And it must be done respecting the national sovereignty of the countries. To finish, I would like to say that the U.S. imperialism is not invincible. The union of peoples, working class, and peace lovers will resist and defeat this machine of terror. As peace lovers, we need to show them another agenda against the promoted hate, the agenda of love. In the past, they said that peace is revolutionary. Now, we say that love is also revolutionary. We love the world, which is beautiful by its diversity. We love the rights of sovereignty and self-determination of the peoples. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tomas. Your timing, especially in a second language, is impeccable. That was exactly 10 minutes. Our next speaker is Michael T. McPhearson, currently the Executive Director of Veterans for Peace. Previously, for 3 years, he was the National Coordinator of United for Peace and Justice. He works closely with the Newark-based People's Organization for Progress and the St. Louis-based Organization for Black Struggle. Michael also publishes the McPhearson Report.org, expressing his views on war and peace, politics, human rights, race, and other things, including sports, I think, maybe once in a while. We argue about sports on Facebook or email. Michael launched ReclaimTheDream.org website in an effort to change the discourse and ignite a new conversation about what it means to live in a just and peaceful society and communities. Michael's career in the United States Army included 6 years of reserve and 5 years of active duty service. I'm sorry.
That's enough. Thank you.
I was also going to say, a month ago we had lunch together, and I said I hoped he would be here, and he is, and I'm delighted that Michael is here.
Thank you. So first, I want to give a plug for David Swanson, who is the coordinator for Beyond War in terms of the Nobel Peace Prize. I wanted to get that shout out to there, and the point being that there are people really working for peace that should win the Nobel Peace Prize. So in this short period of time, I'm going to try to address the issues that we're talking about, and I'm going to talk really more about building a movement here in the U.S. as opposed to international. Well, obviously, an international movement is needed in order for there to be world peace. But here at home, we need a broad spectrum movement to control the out-of-control government and monster that we have in this nation. So I want to real quickly so when I look around this room, I see older white people who come from the peace movement in general, which I've been with quite a few years now. I see a number of people of Asian descent, and I'm guessing specifically from Japan, more probably than other places. I see very few people of my descent, African heritage or African diaspora experience. I'm guessing there are not many people of Hispanic descent here either. So we have to ask ourselves, why is that, right? So I'm gonna give you real quick 2 stories from my personal experience. One being 1996 or so, maybe 97. Yeah, definitely 97 or after, maybe 98. When I was out with a friend of mine who was an environmentalist in the Sierra, I guess in the Sierra Club. We had just met each other. And I was on the NAACP board, and we were just talking about our issues. And through the course of the discussion, he made me feel like he felt that the struggle that I was involved in wasn't as important as the struggle that he was involved in, being an environmentalist. He also happened to be a white male who was a lawyer and also graduated from Duke University. Now, what does that mean exactly? I don't know, other than there probably is a little bit of class going on, and certainly a difference in terms of our race, our color, and our experience in the U.S. So that's not a good way to invite me to be part of the environmental movement, to make me feel like my movement, especially when it directly impacts me in the immediate. So the next story, real quick, is 10 years later, 2005, which is 10 years ago, when Hurricane Katrina was about to hit New Orleans. So at that time, I was executive director of Veterans for Peace, and I had basically just become executive director in February. And I'm driving down the road to the office, and I hear a story about Katrina about to hit New Orleans, and that all these people were stranded in New Orleans. So I knew that all these people who were stranded in New Orleans were black people. And I knew that once the hurricane hit, that these black people were going to be in dire distress. Exactly what it looked like, I had no idea, but I knew that. So I'm in the car, actually close to tears, wondering, why am I the executive director of Veterans for Peace? Why aren't I doing something about the issues that disproportionately impact black people? Of course, I continued to be executive director of Veterans for Peace, and we ended up doing some things when it came to New Orleans and Katrina. But the point I'm trying to make is that when people are impacted by particular issues, those are the ones that they're going to pay attention to. And I would say to you, one of the reasons that we do not see a more diverse crowd here today is because people are addressing the issues that they believe most impact them. So one of our challenges as a peace and anti-war movement in the United States, and I would say in any place, is to help people see the connections between what's happening in their lives and war. But one of the ways we have to do that is to understand how those people's lives impact our own. And obviously for me, I understand that as a black person because I'm kind of like in two worlds. Some of us have a challenge to understand how racism impacts your own life and why you must take action in order to change it in your life, as well as to have people be part of the peace movement as you are part of their movement. So what does that look like politically in terms of the impact of not being able to make those bridges? Well, one thing, we can see success in some bridges being made when the peace movement was in 2005 to 2008, I guess, here in the United States, when the peace movement was huge. And it was huge because people in various movements, and most of them were Democrats, and we had a Republican in office, and they felt like the peace movement was a place, like an umbrella movement, that they could come to together and act against Republican policies. They were against the wars. The Republicans were most vulnerable when it came to Iraq, and we felt like we could come together. So we saw some success because people saw where those things meant something in their own lives. But then Barack Obama, and before we get to him actually winning the presidency, we have to remember that the reason that he was able to distinguish himself from Hillary Clinton, because there wasn't that much of a difference between the two, except for the fact that Barack had came out against the invasion of Iraq, and Hillary could not find it within herself to say she made a mistake with giving the president carte blanche in terms of how, Bush reacted to 9/11. So he was able to become a peace candidate, so to speak, and a lot of people hung this idea of peace on Barack Obama, and he was able to ride that into the presidency. So we didn't mean to do that as the peace movement, but it shows that when you bring people together and make peace important to them, that it can actually have an impact on national politics. And that's a very important, I think, lesson to remember, because it shows the power, and it was power that we exercise in a way by mistake, but it shows the power that we can exercise if we find a way to bring people together. That's in contrast to the last race when Barack was running against McCain, and peace was not anywhere in the agenda of either party. And in fact, the Democrats were celebrating the killing of Osama bin Laden. So war was actually saw as a strong point in the Democratic Party, which was a failure on our part. And I think we need to think about what that means, that in 4 years, we go from peace issues, not war issues, but peace issues being the road to the White House. And then 4 years later, when I watched the convention, I was so disappointed that there was no inclination or anything about there being peace. Now, so I'm going to move on, because I think that illustrates the importance of us building this coalition that we need to build. So how do we build the coalition? And I think there's many ways to do that, but there's some specific things I want to try to address real quick in the last 2 minutes, but I'll do so when I hopefully get a chance to say more. So one thing is, like the gentleman who made me feel like my movement didn't mean as much as his, that we need to be conscious of our language and how we talk about things. And yesterday, Sekou talked about showing up. But showing up means more, actually, than just being out in the street. It also means showing up in how you talk about things and how you act when it comes to what other people are going through. We must have humility. Humility meaning that we understand that our movement, as important as it is, that is not as important as in everybody's life as it might be in your own. One thing that is incredibly important for an international movement and a national movement is a narrative that includes everyone. And an important way to create that narrative is to have empathy and some feeling and some skin. You got to feel this yourself. You have to feel that you have some skin in the game that's similar to the other people that you're trying to include in your narrative. If you do not feel that, then you can't create the narrative, and people will see and know that you're doing this for your own interest, and it's not a collective interest. Very important is, do not let ideology get in the way of understanding how we as individuals act in the world. By that I mean, we can talk about how capitalism makes this person or that person or whatever systems make people do things, but we all have self-determination in terms of how we act. So we must be self-reflective and think about how I'm acting in the world, how my ways might oppress women, for example. Because as a man, I'm an African American, I'm surely part of an oppressed class in this country, but I'm also part of an oppressor class as a man. I have to think about that and think about how I act and what I do and what I say. And then that will help me be able to create this inclusive narrative and be thoughtful when I talk about anti-war and peace things when I'm reaching out to the National Organization for Women, for an example. How much time I have? 9. Okay, so I will finish it, as we continue to discuss things. Thank you.
So our next speaker, halfway to Brooklyn over there, is Kyoko Nishikawa, Vice President and Central Executive Committee member of Shinfujin, the New Japan Women's Association. She began her activism organizing young people in the Tokyo area and became a full-time staff member at Shinfujin's national office in 1995. She's been on the organizing committee of the World Conference Against A&H Bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And for the review conference and the actions here, she's a member of the Secretariat of the Japan Council Against A&H Bombs, which is comprised of over 1,000 people that came to New York. I can't even imagine the logistics of getting 1,000 people from Japan to New York City, including of course, Hibakusha. In this delegation, more than 200 are Shinfujin members. And in addition to being a committed activist, Kyoko is also an artist. So please welcome Kyoko.
はじめまして、新日本婦人の会の西川です。新婦人は女性の要求実現と平和のために全国の地域職場で活動しています。15万人の会員を持ち、53年の歴史があります。私は平和部長と若い世代を担当しています。私たちは日本元帥協に所属しています。この NPT 会議に向けて2011年から核兵器全面禁止の交渉開始を求める署名に取り組み、600万を超える署名を手に持ってきます。1000人を超える代表が明日のニューヨークに、行動に参加します。
Dear friends, I'm Kyoko Nishikawa from New Japan Women's Association, and my association, which we call Shinfujin for short, is a member of Gensuikyo, and it works in communities and workplaces all over Japan to realize women's demands and for peace. It has 150,000 members and 53-year history. I am in charge of peace activities and of organizing of young generations. Towards the 2015 NPT Review Conference, Gensuikyo started a signature campaign in 2011 calling for the start of negotiations on a total ban on nuclear weapons. More than 1,000 delegates are bringing more than 6 million signatures from Japan to join the NPT-related actions here in New York tomorrow.
この4年間、日本は大激動でした。その中で集めてきた署名です。その一つは2011年3月11日に起きた東日本大震災でした。あらゆることを根底から覆す出来事でした。目の前の命をどう守るのか、一人一人が考え行動する日々が始まりました。2つ目は貧困格差の問題です。3つ目は極右の安倍政権の誕生です。日本をアメリカの戦争に参加する国へと作り変えようとしています。
Since the launching of the signature campaign 4 years ago, Japan has been going through upheavals. First, Great East earthquake that took place on March 11, 2011, and the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster that ensued changed everything totally. Each one of us started to think about how to protect the lives of those around us and to take action. Secondly, the gap between the rich and poor continues to grow. Thirdly, the extreme rightist Abe Shinzo came to power with an intention to transform Japan into a country that can participate in a war started by the US. Shinfujin has collected 1.52 million signatures. We have connected our effort to gather support for the petition with all other campaigns to defend livelihood and peace, including zero nuclear power plants, opposition to state secrecy law, and to the use of the right to collective self-defense. No to increase of consumption tax rate, as well as demand for free medical services for children and school lunch. Our member, always carry all kinds of signature forms along with the petition forms for a ban on nuclear weapons wherever they go and in all kinds of activities. One of the successful tactics we used was what we call going out, reaching out action. It's about publicity, dialogue, and approaching to as many people as possible. one member jumped into the transportation company on her way to the station and collected 60 signatures. Others asked those who see often at their favorite bars, or the owners of funeral parlors, boutiques, flower shops, and hairdressers, workers at construction sites, to sign a petition. Some members also asked women, non-regular workers, with a call to join the union. Shinfujin members were everywhere to collect signatures, including fire stations, libraries, museums, churches, temples, agricultural cooperatives offices, hospitals, local government offices, trade unions, elementary and junior high schools, and daycare centers. There are municipalities where mayors are taking initiatives to collect signatures according to our request. For the people we talked to, the actions taken by the United Nations and the governments of Austria and Marshall Islands for abolishing nuclear weapons are something they have never heard of, and broaden their views to a global level. If we explain that our petition is to support those governmental initiatives, the people would reply at once, like saying they'd circulate the forms at their office or keep them in their shops. Through our reach out effort, we have experienced that community people became interested in a war legislation and asked us to give them for the flyers we produced, and that the conversation developed into touching the poverty issue in their own community. This is how our signature campaign for nuclear abolition has become connected with different movements. In our work for the abolition of nuclear weapons, we attach importance to 2 points. One is to have more members, particularly young generation, involved in actions. It is very important to gain first-hand knowledge about what is going on internationally and the facts about the atomic bombing. The best opportunity for us to do so is the World Conference Against Atomic and Hydrogen Bombs held in Hiroshima and Nagasaki every August. Shinfujin decided, as an organization policy, to send as many young members as possible to the World Conference and to the New York actions. And 270 members, including younger ones with children, are coming to New York. The World Conference provides you a learning opportunity to gain a real vision that we can make a difference. Through the World Conference, to understand that the key for a change is the grassroots movement, and to know that there are many people, both in Japan and around the world, who are committed to the cause, and each one of us has the power. This is the first step to become activists. For this year's World Conference, to be held in the 70th year of the atomic bombing, Shinfujin has set an ambitious goal of sending 2,000 members to the conference. One of our chapters has reserved Shinkansen, bullet train, and named it Peace Train, for their members to go to Hiroshima, like you are doing here by the Wharf. Secondly, we are trying to carry on our campaign for nuclear abolition and the opposition to the government attempt to make Japan a war-waging nation at the same time. Being the A-bombed country, the Japanese government blindly follows the US policy of keeping Japan under its nuclear umbrella, and is getting in the way of the worldwide effort for banning nuclear weapons. The major cause of this is the Japan-US military alliance. On April 28th, I think, Prime Minister Abe is coming to Washington. He will be here to agree on the revised guidelines for US-Japan defense cooperation, through which Japan will be more integrated into the US world strategy by making it possible to dispatch Japan's self-defense forces to any part of the globe at any time, not only violating the Constitution, but also going far beyond the existing Japan-US Security Treaty. Abe is going to do what none of his predecessors was able to accomplish.
軍事同盟関係の話はですね、対話では結構難しいんです。だから基本的には漫画にします。漫画。結構可愛い漫画を作ります。今度の国会で出てくる戦争立法は自衛隊をこれまでと全然違くて地球規模に派兵できるものになります。それが分かりやすいものを私たちは毎週新婦人新聞を作ってます。これですね、新婦人新聞。これででっかくやってでっかく印刷して事務所とか宣伝にも使います。
Actually, it is so hard to have people understand what is going on around the issue of the security. So we always always use cartoons to make a flyer or banners like this. But originally, this banner was published in our weekly paper like this. And so this time we have produced this. We have extended it, made extended version of this cartoon, and which explains what the government's intention with the war legislation.
安倍さんはですね、ガンガンやろうとしてますけど、でもそうはいきません。安倍政権は大きな抵抗を受けています。それは沖縄です。保守も革新も経済界も心一つに戦っています。もう一つは女性たちです。それから今、安倍政権ノックアウトの一点であらゆる運動が結集する集会も生まれています。
But we will not allow what the Abe government wants to do. The Abe government actually faces a strong resistance from the people. In Okinawa, a broad coalition was formed by conservative, progressive, and business people in a struggle to oppose the construction of a new military base, and the coalition candidates won a landslide victory, both in a governor and general elections. Actions to block the war legislation are now emerging throughout the country. Women are organizing Red Action to show their... This is Red Action. Women are organizing Red Action. Women are organizing red actions to show their protest wearing something red in front of the Diet building and in communities. In opinion polls, majority of the public are against the new base construction in Okinawa, as well as to the war legislation. The Abe administration is pushing ahead with its long-way policies, refusing to listen to people's voices, suppressing objections, and denying the historical facts about the war of aggression and the sex slavery by the Japanese military. Convergence of movements on different issues is developing around the call of knockout Abe administrations, and it is developing, and rallies and actions are being organized.
核兵器のない世界の実現は新しい世界を開きます。安全保障の名のもとに維持されてきた核兵器は人道上その存在が許されないと突きつけられた瞬間に廃絶へと向かわざるを得ません。これは一発の原子爆弾によって家も人も町も木の葉のように焼かれ吹き飛ばされ、今も苦しみ続けている被爆者の皆さんから教わってきたことです。新婦人の先輩である被爆者の久保光子さんは言いました。アメリカが憎かった。しかし新婦人で私は変わった。 憎しみは連鎖し続く。被爆者の思いに本当に応えるためには、戦争は絶対ダメ、核兵器をなくそうと運動することだと思った。これが私の誇りです。変化を作り出すのは私たちです。皆さん力を合わせましょう。
The realization of a world free of nuclear weapons is the way to create a new world. Nuclear weapons, which have been maintained in the name of security, are doomed to be abolished once they are determined that from the humanitarian perspectives that they are not allowed to exist. This we learned from Hibakusha, who suffered and continue to suffer the consequences of the use of the one single atomic bomb that blew away and burned people, houses, and communities like fallen leaves. Mitsuko Kubo, Hibakusha and Shinfujin member of Hiroshima, once said, "I hated the United States, but after I joined Shinfujin, I changed. Hatred invites hatred, and there is no end to it. I have learned that the only way to truly respond to the desire of the Hibakusha is to be part of the movement to abolish war and abolish nuclear weapons. This is what I take pride in myself. We, the people, are the ones to make peace. Let's take actions together."
Thank you. You should have pre-warned us about the red thing. We could have joined in.
I had a red shirt on last night.
Anyway, our next speaker is Jürgen Scheffran. Jürgen is a professor at the Institute of Geography at Hamburg University and has been an activist in the field of nuclear weapons for many years. Jürgen has served as an advisor to the UN and the German Parliament and was instrumental in developing the draft Nuclear Weapons Convention. So, please.
Thank you very much. Dear friends and colleagues, the world is facing many threats and challenges. Nuclear weapons are one of them. Another one is climate change. Are they related or are they different threats? How can we work together on addressing both? But we have to understand, first of all, how they are interconnected. There's a very powerful statement by Jonathan Schell in his 2007 book, The Seventh Decade, The New Shape of Nuclear Danger. He said, "The two perils, nuclear war and climate change, have a great deal in common. Both are the fruit of swollen human power. In the one case, the destructive power of war. In the other, the productive power of fossil fuel energy. Both put stakes on the table of a magnitude never presented before in human decision-making. Both threaten life on a planetary scale. Both require a fully global response. Anyone concerned by the one should be concerned with the other threat. It would be a shame to save the Earth from slowly warming only to burn it up in an instant in a nuclear war." This powerful statement points to the important but largely neglected linkages between the two dangers of our times. The nuclear menace has survived the Cold War and will continue to threaten life on Earth as long as its destructive potential persists. Similarly, global warming is increasingly posing severe dangers for natural and social systems in many regions of the world, as it could exceed the adaptive capacities and undermine international stability. And it's here where we're talking about the link between both nuclear war and nuclear weapons and climate change and global warming. And there are many linkages, actually. As Jonathan Schell said, global warming is based on the productive power of fossil energy. It has served, in a sense, the wealth of industrialized countries, but at the same time, it had a lot of negative side effects, and global warming is just one of them, of the use of coal, of oil, and of natural gas. The military forces and military security often are to preserve the interest of the fossil industry. Just to mention the possibility of fighting wars on oil, natural gas, and coal in human history. So the fossil age is a major driver of military security and has been also a major driver of building nuclear weapons to protect the interests of those who benefit from the fossil age. Nuclear war and nuclear weapons have also a lot of negative side effects on the environment. Many of you may recall the times when we were talking about the destructive effects of nuclear war on cities, on the landscape, on the whole planet. Just to mention nuclear winter, you may have heard about the concept of nuclear winter, that a few hundred nuclear weapons exploding at the same time could cause through the atmosphere, through the atmospheric release of the material of nuclear explosions, a long-term effect that could last several years and lead to a drastic cooling of several degrees over several years. And that, of course, would affect the food production of the whole planet and could cost the lives of hundreds of millions of people. So here you see an immediate effect of nuclear war on the environment. It's also an issue that climate change itself is can be seen as a security threat because it affects the water supplies of the world. It could lead to more droughts, for instance, in northern African countries, in the Middle Eastern countries, in Central Asia. These are regions that are already suffering a lot from water problems, and climate change could aggravate these problems. It could also add to food security issues when the 1 billion people that has not enough food in the world could be increased as a result of climate change. And you can imagine a lot of conflicts associated with these food and water security issues. These could become major drivers of people becoming refugees, moving away. Some have estimated the number of climate refugees to several hundred millions of people, but this is still a disputed number because people can try to address the problems or concerns of climate change at the location where they are. Finally, climate change can become a cause of natural disasters. It can lead to storms and flood events. Just hurricanes, to mention, for the United States is a big issue, as the Hurricane Katrina has stricken the south coast and the Hurricane Sandy the east coast, including New York. So this is not only a problem for developing countries. The developing countries will be the most severely affected because they have the less adaptive capacities, but industrialist countries such as the United States, European countries, East Asian countries could be also severely affected as a result of climate change. The problem with climate change is that many of these threats could come at the same time and within a very short period of a few decades. What is the reason for climate change? It's the release of fossil energy. What we are doing is to release the biomass and carbon potential that was acquired over millions of years in the soil is released within a few decades. So what we are doing is to deposit all this carbon in the atmosphere, in our atmosphere, and the atmosphere has only limited capacity of keeping this material, and this can lead to several degrees of warming within this century. Now, what could be the possible implications? One possible implication is that we are running into a world where conflict is spreading, and this could also spread the reasons for acquiring nuclear weapons. So there could be a negative feedback loop between more warming and more nuclear weapons, and even the possibility of nuclear war fighting between countries. So it could be the negative feedback loop, and a self-accelerating process could emerge. And among the underlying reasons for this is the problem of accumulation of capital, political power, and also military force. And it's very difficult to get out of this negative feedback loop that is self-enforcing. Can we avoid this problem? Can we possibly develop a positive coupling or positive development of concepts that get out of this negative loop? We could think about the possibility of reducing both threats at the same time. So one is the concept of abolishing all nuclear weapons, banning, abolishing all nuclear weapons. There's a concept of nuclear weapons convention, for instance, to abolish the nuclear threat, move to zero nuclear weapons. We could have the same concept for fossil energy. Develop a concept moving towards a zero fossil world. And both concepts are being pursued at the climate negotiations. Yeah. So zero nukes and zero fossil, I think this is the concept we could work on. And this is clearly a concept we could work on of the peace movement, the environmental movement together, because they have addressing similar problems, similar concerns. They are raising the same issues of injustice in the world, because it's in both cases the same people who are suffering from the consequences of nuclear security, nuclear war fighting, and climate change. And for this reason, I want to call for working together of the movements, the peace movement and the environmental, for the double zero approach. Thank you very much.
So before our last speaker addresses us, I just want to make a quick announcement that in a little while, we're going to hear from representatives of 3 peace walks from California, from the Western Massachusetts Peace Pagoda, and from Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And I can't even imagine how we could do justice to their incredibly impressive perambulations from these corners of the United States. But when we do, I'm going to count on you to do your best to welcome them. That's going to be in just a little while. One of the things that we're big on in this conference is talking about actions you can take and sort of concrete steps. And one that I'm going to insist on regarding our next speaker is that she does not buy a beverage the rest of this weekend. And this goes also for Stephen Polk and for Drew King and for Matt DeVlieger. I don't want to see them buying anything. You all have to keep them hydrated or in alcohol or whatever beverages they want, for a small token of the incredibly hard work that Sofia Wolman and Drew King and Stephen Polk and Matt DeVlieger have done. Sofia Wolman, who I think you should just call Ms. Peace and Planet because she's just done such a fantastic job to make this all happen, currently serves as the Disarmament Associate with the American Friends Service Committee. Last year, she was part of a 17-day peace walk from Okayama to Hiroshima, and participated in the World Conference Against A&H Bombs the last 2 years with Gensukyo in Japan. She has coordinated campaigns to boycott and divest from companies profiting from the Israeli occupation, is active in the Palestine Advocacy Project, and organizes First Friday's Youth Open Mic in Boston. She holds a BA degree in politics from Earlham College and was AFSC's 2013 Stephen G. Carey Fellow. Please give a warm welcome to Sofia Wolman.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here, and thanks to the organizers of this conference for placing me on this panel at this very distinguished final time to kind of make this address. It's appropriate, too, that I'm addressing this crowd before the peace marchers, peace walkers. We come and honor them and see them for the work that they've done. As Kevin mentioned, I did participate in last year's Peace March in Japan, which is an incredible feat and demonstration of the organization in that country. It's a 90-day peace march between Tokyo and Hiroshima, and this was a very formative time for me. So I'm going to jump right in and have a few things that I kind of want to address here. So the first is I think it's important that while we've done this quite a bit throughout the weekend, to kind of harp a little bit more on the current political context and why are nuclear weapons not seen by enough radical young activists in the United States for the incredible inhumanity that they are and that they represent in the world. If we look, nukes have been in the news a lot the past couple weeks. With the Iran deal, we're hearing more about nuclear weapons in the kind of 24-hour media buzz than we usually do. And yet, this is not sparking a kind of automatic education, self-education. I don't get the sense that a new generation, because of this political climate, is blooming and blossoming. And I think that this is really indicative of the need to reframe the debate and to claim the discourse that we have around nuclear weapons. Right now, it is diplomats deal with nuclear weapons. It is the highest level of politics, and I think that there's a sense that nukes and the nuclear weapons issue and the nuclear power issue that's so related are kind of untouchable, and that's critical that we reframe that, right? And I don't think that we necessarily do this by obsessing over something like the Iran deal, as absolutely critical as it is, but by raising the stories of Habakasha, by talking about the risks and the devastation that people around the world, mostly people of color, although not only, have experienced because of nuclear weapons tests, because of uranium mining, of course, the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I think that this has the potential really to start to resonate something in young folks that we're not quite doing quite effectively enough now, and begin to understand, like I said, the human consequences as well as this injustice component. I think that kind of been brought up in the last few years among mostly, I think I have an interesting perspective because I started organizing in college among young people, and I've worked quite a bit in the peace movement, which is typically, but not exclusively, older. And I take some issue with this distinction that there's like the peace movement and then like the young activists. Because I think this is a sort of self-segregation that we're imposing, and it's unnecessary. And I'll get to that, thank you. So that said, the need to make nuclear weapons and this issue resonate. I don't really, and I think that probably most people in this room share the idea, although maybe I'm wrong, that the nuclear weapon states, I don't really get the sense that they're looking to disarm and give up their weapons, given the amount of power that this gives them to inflict agendas around the world. So our challenge, I think, then, is to create spaces that put pressure on the governments, although also on other bodies that are profiting, for example. So I think in doing this, in talking about the risks, and talking about the consequences, and talking about why are there 16,000 nuclear weapons ready to be used around the world, these are really, I don't think that we can frame them as kind of cold, calculated conversations. In hearing from Habakasha, these are incredibly painful stories that necessitate spaces of healing and of caring and of thank you for the encouragement. And these are challenging spaces. These are spaces that I think really require us to be vulnerable with our comrades, to cry with our comrades, to really feel the deep pain, whether we're hearing from Habakasha or just discussing or a presentation or whatever it may be. And I think that we need more of this. I think that we need more arts, for example, that allow for humor, and not just really long statements that are incredibly powerful and impactful and say a lot, but who are we really reaching, right? Who are you reaching through this? We need to reach the masses, but first we need to reach our comrades, as well as taking to the streets. So I think that earlier in a conversation, was it in the workshop earlier today, the idea of taking to the streets, this is so powerful, and I think that demonstrations maybe sometimes can be inspiring, and sometimes they can kind of floor you with the level of exhaustion and exhilaration that you feel. And personally participating in a couple protests with the Black Lives Matter movement, this was one of the times that I woke up in the morning and felt like completely drained, but also like everybody who was there, like thousands of people in Boston the night before, woke up feeling like the chant goes, "I believe that we can win." And this is critical, and this, I think, can come from conferences and from individual conversations, but also through these really emotionally driven spaces. On the topic of social media, it has a lot of functions, and as a young person, I think I'm learning a lot about social media, but I'm by no means an expert, but I've seen it work really effectively, like Sekou was talking about last night, how when the demonstrations first started in Ferguson, folks in Palestine were tweeting them within like 48 hours how to deal with the tear gas. Like, this is a very functional use of social media. We can see the weekly protests in Berlin, Palestine. We can see the protests and the steadfastness of the demonstrations on Jeju Island in Okinawa that are staggering. I think this allows and facilitates some solidarity work that we can do. But I do want to just kind of emphasize the need to create these, like I was talking about, these spaces that can be painful, that can be difficult. Really doing meaningful solidarity work and organizing cross-issue, cross-movement, cross-race, cross-generationally can be incredibly challenging and really kind of disrupt your sense of, in my personal experience, can create a lot of not self-consciousness, but nervousness, because we really, if we're doing the work honestly, we realize how, as a white person, like, we realize how incredibly powerful these dynamics are at play, and the need to step back and just listen, and the need for humility, which is difficult over social media, but easier if you're in a room, not easier, but much more present if you're in a room where you may not have as much as a voice as you typically do as a white person, or as an older person, or as a man, for example. Now, concretely, I, like Kevin introduced me, have been very involved in divestment and boycott work, and personally I see the incredible power and impact that this can have, and I am very hopeful about where the movements to divest from these corporations that are profiting from the occupation of Palestine, from fossil fuels, from nuclear weapons, from the prison industrial complex, from horribly unjust immigration policies. Very hopeful about this because of the potential that it gives us for cross-issue work that's genuine and honest. We can target, we can create lists of demands, like with the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. The list of demands is not about a political party gaining power. It's a rights-based approach. And so I think if we take, perhaps it's not a rights-based approach, but a very principled-based approach, that this can help us get around some of the silos that exist, not only between our movements, but honestly within our movement to eliminate nuclear weapons. And this, I think, is critical and requires this humility, and requires also a new way of thinking in terms of organizing, and in terms of who we're putting as figureheads, but also what we're kind of talking about and who we're trying to impact. The corporations are buying our elections. We know this, and so it's important that we are targeting them. So I'm out of time, but thank you very much, and I look forward to the Q&A, and welcome to the Peace Marchers.
Thank you, Sofia, and thank you to all our panelists for giving such insightful presentations. So the title of the plenary is Movement Building and Actions for the Future. This is our movement. We should all take personal responsibility for it. Yeah. In a minute and a half, could all the panelists say what you think is something every member of the audience could do to play their part in building our movement?
Yeah, I think the main thing is do the opposite to conflict. Form cooperatives. I think you can form cooperatives in the environmental field, for instance, doing renewable energy projects together. In Germany, there are a lot of projects like that. Wind power stations can be bought by citizens, operated by citizens. They supply the renewable energy into the power grid. They may even operate the power grid themselves. So this is kind of building an alternative from the bottom up. The same could be done on the peace side, and build cooperatives for peace. Work together. I think that's the main message I want to give is work together to avoid these massive, large-scale conflicts on a global scale, on a national scale, and on a regional scale. I think that's the main message, also to realize concepts such as suggested the double zero approach.
So the last part I was going to say kind of speaks to that, and it also speaks to building cooperatives, cooperation between each other and ourselves. And I think that really starts with us individually. So as I was saying, I think there needs to be more self-evaluation and self-reflection by us as individual people. Because key to movement building is not just system critique, but self-critique. The greatest weapon that the system has against us is our own limitations, how we act and treat each other. And I know, at least here in our peace movement here in the United States, there's all these fractures that it's good for vigorous debate. And Veterans for Peace, for example, we're always having vigorous debate. But sometimes it can be too vigorous and stand in the way of actually getting something done collectively. And since we know that collective power is the only way that we're going to win, it makes little sense for us to let our differences, that when you look at it in the main, are not that far apart compared to who's really our opposition. So we need to do self-reflection so that we, and I'm talking about all of us, right? So that we can find that place where we can do the cooperative, where we can work together across all these different lines of issues, the silos that we're in. This is critical, and it will also provide us a basis for the narrative that we need to develop so that we can bring everybody together across the spectrum of movements.
You know, for me, the main message of the conference is that we should spread the messages of the conference at home, that we bring the arguments and facts we learned here, we discussed here, to our people where we are living and staying, at school, at universities, in the cities, in the suburbs, to the people, because we have to convince the people that peace is a realistic goal and that it's worthwhile to fight for peace. And this we have to do mainly where we are living and staying. And we have to think that peace work is people's work. And when this does not happen, we will not be successful. And the next step, when people start working for peace, is that we should build networks. Networks where we are staying and living with other organizations, with other groups, with other people, with other organizations, with other movements, so that we can enlarge and combine our efforts for peace. And third point is, I think we have to develop much more our independent media system based on social media, because the world is full of lies of the so-called important people of the world, that we overcome the lies and helping the truth breaking through. For this we need much more new media, social media structures than we have. And they must be independent and free, and they must be open for discussing. I think these are messages from the conference we can take home, we should spread, and then we will be successful really in developing a new international peace movement.
Okay, I have a long list. So riffing off of this for a moment, the media, the mainstream media in the United States at least, loves the drama. And I will say that through working on divestment campaigns, we have a lot of drama, and divesting from Israeli occupation gets in the news now. Scarlett Johansson, the whole Oxfam, Scarlett Johansson, SodaStream controversy, look it up if you don't know about it. That was like national news, and that was a really big, we saw that as a victory in the movement. So I echo the need for our own independent media, but also kind of creating, buying into and feeding into this sick kind of culture sometimes can work for our favor. Create stronger communities. I mentioned this and talked about this, but I need it desperately, and I'm realizing this. So eating together, singing together, praying together if you're into that, dancing together, whatever it is, socializing. We need to be friends with the people we're working with. That's very important because we need to keep each other strong and on point and honest. I don't want to say that this movement needs money, but we could do a lot with more money. And we don't need, I don't think, like the billions of dollars that the corporations have, but I do wonder where we have access and whom we have access to, that we can start to kind of funnel money towards these young activists that the traditional peace movement so wants to support. I think that that's a way, because sometimes us young folks, we don't necessarily have that access, and that's a broad assumption, and I hope I'm not offending anyone by that, but that's another thing that I think. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much by everything. And I would like to say that when we criticize in Latin America the imperialism of the United States, we're not criticizing the American people. The American people are workers like our people in Brazil, in Venezuela, in Argentina. But there is something special because you are in the core of the imperialism. You are in the center where the decisions are taken. And it's very important because I am very proud to be here with people like you, because you are a vanguard of the freedom of the democracy, but the true democracy, not the democracy of corporation, not the democracy of a spectacle, not the democracy of marketing, but the democracy of the popular participation in the decisions of the country. I hope return to the United States and watch here a peaceful country, a country which is recognized by its rich culture, not by its wars. Thank you so much.
運動の構築どうするかなのかなと思うんですけど、新婦人は、こう見えて穏やかな団体です。地域では親子リズム小組とか絵手紙サークルとかをたくさん持っていて、たくさん楽しいこともやっています。
I think the question was how we best effectively build up a movement. And New Japan Women's Association, maybe you felt like we are a very aggressive organization, but actually we're not very aggressive, as you may think. And now Shinfujin is also organizing members and community people in our cultural activities, like we organize children's gymnasium, children's rhythmic circles, or we organize like drawing circles. So we are very much rooted in organized at grassroots level.
それで新婦人は新聞を発行しています。で、先ほど漫画も出しましたけど、安倍さんが一番最初の時にもガイドラインじゃなくてあれは集団的自衛権をやるぞというふうになった時に、とても集団的自衛権って難しいけれど、これで勝負をするためにということでいつもはやらないんですけど、新婦人新聞をぶち抜きで全部漫画にしたんです。で、普通の読者もいっぱいいますので、普通ってねかなりみたいな反応はあったけど、反響はたくさんあって好評でした。
And one of the tools we use in our movement is our weekly paper. And as I said, we release information about what the government is trying to do through this weekly paper. And when we found out that Abe is was seriously about enacting the war legislation, this is not the one, but in other issues, we flooded cartoons. We put all the cartoons to explain what the Abe government's plan is all about, because our members are not all of them are very much politically conscious, and there are members who are just enjoying circle activities and so on. So we want all those, including all those not very politically conscious members, to know what is going on. So we try to be as inclusive as possible.
今、安倍政権の暴走の中で、その女性たちが政治的なことや今起きていることに関心が高まっているので反響が高いんです。で、新婦人はいろいろなサークルもありましたが、その時ぐらいから急に出てくるのがですね、カフェです。〇〇カフェと言ってますが、憲法カフェや、教科書カフェ、中には年金カフェや税金カフェもありますけど、とにかくこういう政治の話や社会や暮らしのことを話し合う場を地域全体で持つことになりました。つまりですね、新しい要求や変化があったときにそれを実行できる場を地域に作っていくというのを徹底しました。
And after after we found out that Abe was seriously trying to make Japan a war-waging nation, many of our members have started to have concerns about it, and almost spontaneously, our members all over Japan started to organize themselves in a, how do you say, we call it cafe-style conversation circles. And so in some members get together to pick up some issues they are very interested in, such as textbook screening issues and pension system problem, and poverty issues, and all kinds of issues they want to talk about. They get together to form a cafe-style conversation circle, and they invite people, not only the members, but also people in the communities. So what I'm trying to say is that whenever something happens, something very important happens, and whenever we see a sign of changes, then we try to provide spaces for people in our communities to get together and have a dialogue.
Thank you.
つまり新しい要求や変化にそのことが活躍できる場を新しく作ることが大事だと思います。それは若い世代もそうです。若い世代には私たちはチームを作ったり、そこの居場所を作ります。で、そこで自由になんか自分たちの発想を生かしていただく、それはうまくいってんじゃないかなと思ってます。
So we try to involve more people in our campaigns and movements, but to start with, they have to be heard. So we try to provide spaces where people have chances to speak out, and this also applies to organizing of younger generations. The younger generations have their own issues that they want to talk. So whatever, one of the things we are very focused on is to make spaces for all people, all members who want to have a space to share.
Okay, we've had a fantastic panel and a long and fruitful day. We have just a few more minutes. We definitely want to hear from our peace perambulators who have come from so far away. I'd like Peter Watts from Footprints for Peace from Tennessee and Sister Claire Carter from the Peace Pagoda in New England to come up and say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Peter Watts. I've come a real long way to be here this evening. Being part of Footprints for Peace, I also come from Australia, if you didn't really know. The oldest culture on this planet. Now, my family has been immediately affected by the use and now mining of uranium. I have visited Japan recently after Fukushima and spoke with many Japanese people from Hiroshima and spoke in Tokyo at a civil tribunal to try and make the use of uranium illegal. That's what it should be. Our people have lived in Australia for at least 120,000 years. We as mankind today are like little infants playing with this stuff that we don't even fully understand and don't know the full repercussions for. Recently, I just attended up in Quebec a World Uranium Symposium, and that was about the same principle, to ban the very use of uranium. I look around here and I've seen people from Australia that I've seen, and I've seen people from Japan. This is very serious stuff. My family, my grandmother was taken. I've lost a brother. When I visited Japan, the people of Japan, I was quite honoured for them to call me Habakasha too. And I'm sure there's many other people out there who are Habakasha. Personally, I don't really like the idea of any more Habakasha in the world. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to one of our colleagues now. We left Leonia, is that right? At 8 o'clock. We've walked here. My feet are sore. I'm tired. I'm sick and tired. I'm especially sick and tired of this uranium industry. Thank you, honey.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. We represent actually 3 walks. The third walk, apologies, had to be someplace else, and that was a walk that began from the Lawrence Livermore Lab in California, and it moved to, the nuclear power stations on the West Coast, California, and moved with the native people in California, also went to Big Mountain, uranium mining, and other struggles. They've been to the Seneca Nation, where there is a terrible nuclear dump site. It's horrendous. And basically moving with native people and non-native people and the whole nuclear chain. And so that's the third walk. And I'm representing also the walk from the New England Peace Pagoda. Let's see, our banner was the planetary initiative for peace, planetary movement for peace. We tried to use the same language as planet and peace. We were trying to move with this initiative that's an international. We know how hard the people have been working internationally and nationally to bring all this together, to bring people and issues and movements and hearts and minds together. So we were trying to use that language. The walk we were on started at the Peace Pagoda in Western Massachusetts, moved through New England, New York, and then actually drove to Washington, D.C., and then walked back, the northern route, back to this conference and to the event, the great event tomorrow. We tried to speak in all the communities we went to. We tried to speak to this conference, and we tried to encourage people to come tomorrow, the 26th, to be in the streets and be together with all the other people gathered. We had a strong sense that this year is, of course, kind of reseeding a momentum that all of us want to keep going, and very much in line with what all these panels people are saying, to unite deeply the issues and unite all of us. And that is, as we agree with what everyone was saying here, that's how we're going to get the power to change. I just want to mention a wonderful man from Japan who walked with us the second half of the walk, Mr. Noritaka. I'm sorry. Sorry. Please forgive me. Matsura. Oh, wonderful man, wonderful friend. He brought a tremendous energy. He spoke every night. He had a presentation he gave. In his family, there is a hibakusha, and he brought that intimate connection that some of you had referred to, a sort of heart connection directly to the issue. He talked about Kobe also being a nuclear-free port. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you, and we certainly are going to keep on keeping on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Claire. We really achieved quite a bit. I have a few last announcements. Some of you will be wondering why I'm wearing George Martin's hat. Well, it's because I want to listen to the youth, and I want to kind of build from what Sofia was saying. We organized this as an act of faith. We had some people come forward with money, and the rest was we didn't know where the money's going to come from, but we knew it would come. And so we're going to pass George Martin's hat around to see if we can get some more of that money that's going to pay for the bills that we've committed to pay. A bigger hat, well, there's a box over here, so if you don't get to the hat, there's a box over here into which you can help make this all possible. I want to also say that I think one of the things that we've heard is that we need to understand that movement's going to happen in different ways and to appreciate some victories that we've already had. So I was out in the hallway before when one of our young activists brought his cell phone over to me and said, "Look at this." It was a former U.S. Disarmament ambassador responding to Peace and Planet. Say, "Oh, what good things the United States has done." Well, when they have to speak out to us, it's because they've already heard us. It's because we're making our voices heard and we're out there. So just to appreciate what we've done and to appreciate that movement looks in different ways and we won't always see it. A few more announcements. In terms of what we can do and to understand the nature of our movement here, I want to thank Elaine Scarry for when we were organizing in Boston and kind of laying the foundations for this in Boston. Before this book called African Americans Against the Bomb was published, she said it was coming out. It's an important book. It tells another story about what the U.S. anti-nuclear and peace movements and the relationship between those movements in the struggle for racial equality, for human dignity, for human rights has been going all the way back. I mean, all the way back to 1945. And I want to say that Vincent Intondi, who wrote that book, is here. We still have some more copies. And before you leave, if you want to come over and see me, we'll sell you copies at $25 a piece. It's a way to go deeper into what our movement is, and I think it's an important story to get out to a much wider group of people. Looking at my notes here. I want to call out a number of people. We had appreciations expressed before. I want to cite Jim Anderson, who's done so much so quietly behind the scenes. Pat Fry, who many of you saw upstairs, who has really anchored our media work. Sally Jones from New York Peace Action, who's done so much to pull us together here. Judith LeBlanc, who no longer one of our three co-conveners, but who laid some of the very important foundations that made what we've done possible. Libro de la Piana, totally invisible to most of us, but worked so deeply with Sofia in pulling together our website and making that happen. George Martin, who's been kind of consistent throughout. Chris Dunn from the American Civil Liberties Union. We're going to be marching tomorrow. We're going to have a festival tomorrow. We wouldn't be doing it without Chris Dunn. We've had so many obstacles thrown in our way, and the ACLU was there to help make it possible. Two more. I want to thank Luba Lukova. She's not here, but you've seen our graphic, which tells really the story of who we are, who we want to become. If you can just move over a little bit, young man, and people will see. Luba made this that we've used, and I think your visuals in a sense say who you are and who you want to be. Finally, I want to thank Kyle Depew, who you've seen around here taking photographs, our official photographer. The next thing I want to do, quite before we're done, two things. Our Japanese friends have told us about the importance of cartoons and the importance of visuals. We have 3 of these mutant costumes that we would like 3 people to wear tomorrow during the march and festival. Also, it's been a little bit cold, and so this will give you a little bit of extra cover as you go. But it's okay. So we've got 3 of these. I've got 1 here and 2 more over there, and we'd like to have them back at the end. Then I'd like to, as I'm doing these things, I do want to ask Sofia to come up here, because I know how hard she's worked and who she's had to put up with. So if I can find in here, she didn't know why we brought this here, but I just want to give this to Sofia as an expression of appreciation for all that she's done. And then the 2 final things to say. I mean, I think this has been an important conference. I think it's only a step. But I think it's in some ways a foundation and a prologue for what we're going to keep on doing. And I think we've had both information but also challenges to who we're going to become, who we're going to talk to, and how and where we're going to be. And I just want to appreciate everybody who's come and helped to make that possible, all of our speakers and all of our organizers. The final piece is tomorrow, friends. We've had one dimension of action. Tomorrow is the other. People talk. I think Reiner was talking, among others, about the importance of it being in the streets, right? Well, if you haven't come from another country, please use your telephone tonight and tell your friends to come out and join us tomorrow. Your relatives, your daughters, your sister. We're going to be at Union Square North, which is at 17th Street and South Park. We'll be starting on time at 1 o'clock. I mean, we've really tried to do things on time. We've got a tight time with our permit. Get there early. Get there certainly by 12:30. Don't blame the traffic. Get there early. We'll have a not too long rally. Then we'll be marching up 3rd Avenue over to Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza. I need to tell you a little bit about Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza. We will have a festival there. There'll be a number of tables with literature. There'll be music. We don't have a sound permit until 4 o'clock. So if you get there at 3:30, they'll be singing. But if you don't hear anything coming over the loudspeaker, don't worry, just hang in with us. At 4 o'clock, we will have High Representative Kane, who was here last night, and Ambassador Faruqi, who is going to be the president of the NPT Review Conference, and they will be there to receive something on the order of 8 million petition signatures calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons. So that will be the, if you will, the central visual of the festival, but there'll be music there, and we want you to have a good time. So with that, I think I'm in a position to say thank you, to wish you a good evening, to wish us warm and sunny weather tomorrow, and to see you out there taking the next steps for peace, people, and planet. Thank you. And thanks to our co-chairs.